If you like the video, make sure to like, subscribe, and comment. For more videos like this. Serious, what was the scariest thing you have seen/heard? Watching the entire back of an underground mine fail in front of you with men under it. Buddy was running a scoop tram in a mine in BC when the shotcrete and rock bolts all sort of fell off the back of the drift, bringing with it most of the rock above. Dude lived because the cab was reinforced, but it could have been so much worse. That's the moment your blood turns cold, because there is not a damn thing on earth you can or could have done differently. I also got to witness a buddy almost get killed by a rock burst while underground diamond drilling. The 2.5-inch core drill punched into a steam pocket and shot the drill pipe and the rig back about 10 feet in an instant. The drill operator's usually behind a steel plate that acts as a shield. There was a sliver of rock 4 inches long stuck halfway through it. My point being, underground mining is dangerous as fuck. My best friend called me at 3 a.m. He said, "Goodbye, honestly you were my only reason, but sometimes it just hurts too much." I immediately called the cops and drove to his house. We found him in his closet. Unfortunately, he had passed away. I was only 16, but we knew each other for years. It was just me and him against the world. We would get bullied a lot, but we had each other. I miss him every day, even 3 years later. My sister and I are convinced there was something in our old house. When I was in middle school, I went through a bout of time where I couldn't sleep with the lights off, and I had to be able to see my bedroom door at all times. I kept waking up in the middle of the night and seeing things moving in my peripheral vision. One night it was really bad. I was so freaked out I was in a cold sweat. When I looked into the dark hallway outside my bedroom door, it looked like something was swirling around in the darkness. I spent the hours reading but still being aware of things around me. Around 5 a.m. I got really frustrated and tired. I put my book down and flopped down in bed. By flopping down, my blanket fluffed up and blocked my view of the door. I smacked the blanket down, and across the room I saw this figure. It was only for a second, but it's burned into my mind. It was tall, dark brown, skinny, and hunched over. I blinked and it was gone. My sister saw it more than I did. But she recently told me that one night she left her room to get some water. She had to go through my room to get to the hallway, and when she was in my room she looked over at me and saw the figure standing at the end of my bed, staring at me while I slept. She then decided she didn't need water that badly and went back into her room. While camping with my son and husband near the Flaming Gorge, in the middle of the night, I wake up to hear my son, in his tent about 20 yards away, saying, "You guys, someone is outside of my tent." The next morning there were bloody bones and animal parts near our campsite and his tent. One night when I was in elementary school, I randomly woke up in the middle of the night for no reason. I didn't need to use the bathroom. I wasn't cold, wasn't hot, and didn't feel sick. I only had a weird feeling in my stomach. I tried to go back to sleep, but a minute or so after I woke up I heard footsteps out in the hall. My bedroom was accessed through a door in the middle of the hall. Now for a bit of background, I lived with my nanny, Grandma, everyone called her Nanny though, and she would always get up at some point in the night to go to the bathroom and check on me like any other grandma in the world would do, so I thought, oh, it's just Nanny getting up to use the bathroom. Well, I started to get confused because it had been like 10 seconds since I initially heard the footsteps and I hadn't seen my nanny in the hall through the doorway yet. Then, the ducking hall light turned on. The light switch was past my door. I was legit scared shitless. Once the footsteps got to the end of the hall, they stopped. I never heard anyone use the bathroom or anything. I sat there in silence for a minute or two, listening to the silence in fear and panic. Then the footsteps started again and the light turned back off, and then the footsteps continued back into the living room and stopped. I never saw a shadow passing through the doorway. I still keep thinking to myself that I must have blinked or been tired and not seen her, or even dreamed the whole thing. I still don't know what to think of that situation, and now I have a crippling fear of being in the dark because I feel like some demon is about to stab me in the back and kill me. So, this happened a long time ago. Like, seriously, the only way I remember this is because of the near-death experience. So, when I was little, I was home alone. My parents had a pet dog. I was instructed to go to sleep at 8, I think. So I fell asleep for a few hours. My parents had gone to a concert, so they were gone past 1 p.m. So I'm suddenly woken up around 11 by my dog barking. I go downstairs, and he is sitting by the door. I tell him to come with me, and he keeps sitting and barking by the door. I looked out the windows, but nothing was there. Then my dog stopped and went upstairs with me. I locked my door with my dog in my room and went back to sleep. I woke up around midnight to police sirens and police breaking my bedroom door down. My parents had got home early due to wanting to get home before traffic. and had discovered that a friend of my dad had broken into my house through the roof and was planning to kidnap me and hold me for ransom. If my parents hadn't gotten home early, I probably would have been kidnapped, my dog could have died, and I could have been killed. So, thank you post-concert traffic. Once I was back home over some break in college. My family was driving me crazy. You all know how is it once you move out and then come back, so I decided I was going to go for a run at the trail around this huge city park right by my house. It's just a 5K, very close to my house, and I used to have to run it all the time for soccer in high school, so I felt really comfortable going there even though it was late, just after 10 p.m. I just wanted to get out of the house. It's late and it's cold, so the trail around and the park are pretty dead. I see a couple who look like Olympic runner types, and that made sense that they'd be out exercising. I'm almost finished, the track is a circle and I'm almost back at the part near where I parked my car, and I see the first other person I've seen since the really fit couple. She's coming from the other direction. She's jogging, but she's doing it backwards. So I can see her, but her back is facing me. As we get closer, I start to see that it's super awkward. Her gait is almost cerebral palsy-esque. And, as you might imagine, running backward on a curved track is kind of bad idea. So her head is turned kind of far to the side so she can jog backward and stay on the trail and not hit the fence. It got weirder though. She's not in running clothes at all. She's in jeans, ballet flats, and a short-sleeve polo shirt. Her hair is down and basically all in her face. It's giving the heebie-jeebies, and I don't really know why. Like, sure, that's not normal running attire, but it's just clothes. We're getting closer and closer to where we're going to be shoulder to shoulder for a second, going separate ways. And if I were a dog, the hackles at the back of my neck would have been huge. My mental state, this is weird but not a big deal, has never been so divorced from my physical state. Shaky panic attack breaths, hair on the back on my neck up, adrenaline making my veins feel weird, etc. in my life. Before this I didn't really understand the whole my body was mutinying against my brain thing that people say. Everything except my brain was telling me to turn around rather than cross ways next to this girl, but that would have meant running almost the entire track again to get to my car, and fuck that, lol. Anyway, it's too late. I'm like 10 steps away from being shoulder to shoulder with this girl. And keep in mind, she still has her back to me. I was planning on doing that awkward grin you do when you pass someone on a smallish part of the track. But it comes and we're right next to each other and I can't look at her. And I don't. It's been like 20 steps and it hits me that if she's still running backward, that now she's staring at the back of my head. And I don't fucking like it at all. I get these instant intrusive thoughts of her finishing winding up backward and just flinging forward at the back of my head. And immediately I stop running like runner running and start fucking sprinting to my car. I get in and lock it, but for some reason I just can't bring myself to start it. I just keep scanning around for her, feeling frozen. Finally, whatever adrenaline issue I was having wore off and I made the short drive to my house. Barely remember it, I couldn't stop thinking about the freaky girl. Absolutely nothing happening, and it's still the most freaked out and spooked I have ever been in my life. That's what I get for trying to exercise my frustration away instead of drinking like a normal person. I had insomnia for a long time. Still do, to a degree. I used to go days upon days without finding a way to sleep. After a few I would hallucinate. Vivid and clear illusions which I could only recognize because I knew they weren't real. My senses would betray me, but my common sense would not. Most of what I saw was standard stuff. Bugs in my food, shadow people in the dark corners of rooms, movement in the corners of my eyes. But one time I didn't sleep for around 10 days. I might have caught a micro nap, or something, but I didn't get any real sleep for well over a week, and I was falling apart. I decided to try to burn some excess energy with a run. There was a path near my house. I started running around maybe noon, I think. It started off as normal as these desperate runs did. I was seeing things, shapes of people in the trees, silent and steady as they ever were, that tirelessly energy carrying me with an unnatural ease along game trail and self-beaten footpaths. I think I was starting to get tired when a sudden movement made me jump. I turned expecting nothing. The movement out of the corner of my eye, nothing more. But there was one of my shadow people, walking, so purposefully, towards me. I knew it wasn't a real person. Real people aren't a shadowy stain across my vision. But then again, my shadow people hallucinations didn't move. This one did. I ran as fast as I could until I got home. I saw countless others along the path. They seemed to notice me passing and followed, walking, so purposeful, but without menace. When I finally reached the clearing to my house, they followed me from the woods. They stopped, so many I suspected I was hallucinating from the shadows of the forest, but the angles weren't right. I rushed inside, planning to take a shower and to goddamn it, sleep, no matter what. You may think the shadows were the worst part. They weren't. I showered. I lived alone at the time, in a house in the middle of the woods near a swamp. I stepped out of the bathroom naked to see the form of a little girl, only not right. She was distorted, her proportions like a rag doll. She stepped towards me, as light fell right I saw her face, shriveled like a corpse with two sunk eye sockets with rings upon rings around jet black pits for eyes. She said something I don't remember and I fucking ran. I had dirty gym clothes in the car, and they were all I had for a while. I slept in a coffee shop on campus. I couldn't be alone for days after that. When I was 6 or 7 years old, I used to spend a lot of time home alone in our house. It was a big one, full of creepy places. I remember that there was this door in the yard that connected to a studio that my family used to record some music. It was this big ass door, like a really heavy thing. One afternoon my dog, a black Labrador called Fuser, started barking at the door, which was open at that time cause I wasn't able to close it on my own because its weight. He was very aggressive, like if something dangerous was behind the door. He was always a friendly dog that wouldn't hurt anyone, but something had set him off. The door closed by itself after a few seconds, making a lot of noise. It was an afternoon without wind, so it didn't make any sense. The door was too heavy anyway. It was scary. I locked myself in my room after that. There were some weird noises outside, but didn't have the guts to go and check what was happening. I don't know that this is my scariest, but it's the first thing that came to mind. When I moved into my new house, I was left home alone while my parents took my little brothers to their new school, only 2 blocks away. I was on the phone with my best friend when all of a sudden I hear my front door slam. I assumed my parents got home but looked outside and the car wasn't there. They locked the door when they left, so I was confused. I start to leave my room when I hear voices and things being slammed around. The voices has a weird quality, like they were coming through a radio. Obviously my first thought was, oh crap, someone broke in, and I ducked back inside the room. I start to hear beeping and weird static noises. I was panicking because I couldn't close my door or hide in the closet, because any noise I made would alert any intruders that I was there. So I kinda hunched down behind the door, whispering to my friend over the phone that I was going to hang up and call my dad. As I'm calling him, he can hear some of the noises over the phone and starts running home. All of a sudden I hear loud bangs and something shattering, and one of the voices yells, "She's up there. Go, get her." And running up the stairs. I slam the door and brace against it, because what's the point of staying quiet if they somehow knew I was there? All of a sudden the front door opens again and all of the noises just stop, except for the weird static noises. I can hear my dad calling out for me, and as soon as I call back he tells me to stay up there so he can check the house. He looks through the whole house, absolutely nobody is there. Only 2 odd things were out of place. The door to our storage room in the basement was open and 2 of my dad's walkie-talkies were laying on the ground in his room, which is right by mine, which is where the static and beeping, and I assume the voices, were coming from. To this day we've never figured out what exactly happened, which bothers us a lot honestly, but now every time I'm home alone I keep a baseball bat in my room just in case. Using a throwaway because I'm still shaken by this. Moved into a new apartment and things seemed completely normal the first few weeks. About 8 weeks and I am startled awake by a knocking sound. Someone is at my door. It's around 1 a.m. The knocking is quiet at first, then gets louder and more aggressive until they are positively beating on the door. I'm still groggy, but my first thought is that there is a fire, so I run out of bed and to the door. Just then, I stop. I'm filled with a sense of dread and I just instinctively know that something is not right here and that I should not open the door. The knocking suddenly stops. I go to the peephole but there is no one there. There is a large window by the door and I'm confused how someone could walk away without casting a shadow. I lay awake in bed and didn't get any sleep, but it doesn't come back and I don't think about it. A few days later it happens again. This time no build up, just an aggressive, terrifying beating at the door. I'm scared they will actually kick the door in, whoever they are. I run to the living room with my phone in hand, ready to call the police, but again it stops and they are gone. Again, no shadow at the window either. I somehow managed to nod back off with my bedroom door bolted shut and my cell phone in my hand. About 40 minutes later they're back again. This time I run to the door, turn on the light and scream, "Who's there?" There is a pause and I ask again. And that's when they start making this frantic, animalistic scratching in the wood of the door like an animal. They also jiggle the handle and I can hear them trying the punch code to unlock the door with the keyless entry. My blood ran cold. I called the police and the dispatcher was as freaked out as I was. They stayed on the phone with me and had me look out the peephole to get a description. They were covering the peephole so that I couldn't see. I even tried the window, but I could only see a black shape like someone in a heavy black coat, and it looked like they were crouching down very low. Made sense with where the scratching sound was coming from. I kept screaming that the police were coming because I was so scared they would get inside before the cops arrived. I have no idea how my neighbors didn't hear any of this. Finally, the police arrived, but whoever it was gone. They had to have been on foot because the police barricaded the parking lot and searched the cars. Or they lived in the complex. They sat in the lot for a while and promised to come check again on patrol. I was very shaken but managed to go back to sleep. They came back again 2 hours later. More banging, more scratching, more of my terrified screaming to go away while I called the police again. And again they blocked the peephole and left without a trace. The next 6 months in that apartment building were hell. I had to break the lease to get out, but it was worth it. I didn't sleep a wink for 6 months, and I would wake up in terror from having horrible nightmares that someone was knocking at my door again. They never did come back, but I could not shake the feeling that I was being watched by someone malevolent. They knew when I would be asleep, they knew when the police were and were not there, they seemed to be tracking me. And it's even more unsettling to me that the harassing stopped right after I installed a camera at the door. It was motion activated, so they would have to get close and activate it to know it was there. Did they watch me install it from far away? To this day I have no answers. I had no real connections in that city aside from 2 people who I know for a fact could not have been involved. The area is extremely bigoted, and I did wonder if someone could have watched me walk home from the gay bar next door and picked me as a target, but I have no evidence of that. The not knowing is the scariest part. After the animalistic scratching, of course. Thankfully now I live on the other side of the continent. Been sleeping great these past few months. I don't know what happened, but I was having a dream, or rather a nightmare, not a joke, about Asian faces in twisted smiles and a black background just slowly melting into thick red blood. When I awoke, I was in sleep paralysis and a caterpillar cat, a cat with caterpillar body, only the legs were still paws, with another twisted smile just laughs at me in a deep male voice. I fall back asleep because I'm too tired to be afraid. Then I'm sent into another terrifically terrifying nightmare, where I'm a spectator of myself, or rather, my own decapitated head on a silver platter, being cut into like a cake and eaten by people with pig heads and no eyes. They all turn and look in my direction, not the head's direction, but mine, the spectator's direction, and remove their masks. 7 old men with rotting flesh and coal black teeth. They stand up from their chairs and they have pencil-thin horse legs and hooves, and try to rush me. I get anxiety both from thinking their legs are gonna fucking snap and thinking they're coming at me. They don't reach me, and I wake up again. No caterpillar cat. No sleep paralysis. I just look around, and it's like 6 a.m. The sky's blue, but still kinda dark. My dog came to see what was wrong and made me feel better. I thought I was gonna have a heart attack though, from how loud my heartbeat was in my ears. Now I'm used to my brain fucking me up with horrific nightmares, so my nightmares are no longer nightmares. I lived in a haunted apartment in a scary neighborhood for a while. A lot of the neighbors were taking meth or heroin or other hard drugs. Pretty sure my upstairs neighbor was dealing crack. The haunted bit was frequently seeing moving shadows that weren't being cast by anything. My cat definitely saw them because I have never seen him look so terrified in my life. He would put his ears back and stare at them in horror and occasionally hiss. When the shadows were near my room, my fire alarm would keep going off relentlessly and unplugged speakers kept playing static noise. 3 other people also saw the shadows. I was also simultaneously being stalked by a schizophrenic guy, so there is a bit of irony there. He would knock on my windows in the middle of the night and would constantly be waiting outside my door for me. One night my roommate's girlfriend decided it was a good idea to let him inside while he was drunk and holding a sword. It was very scary. So yeah, just living in that neighborhood in general was a bad time. There were these 2 ladies who everyone referred to as the meth ladies, who would always try to stare in the windows at people and tell messed up stories and try to get people to give them money or let them borrow a car. So there were a lot of scary things going on. I felt like I was living in a horror movie that couldn't decide on one premise. The police sirens were basically constantly going off at all times to the point where I wouldn't even notice them after a while. Just a couple days ago I had my first ever, what may have been, paranormal experience. We set up a ton of Christmas decorations around the house, among which were a couple snow globe things that had a wind-up thing on the bottom of them that when wound played a Christmas tune. These globes are set up at the stairs landing that we have, on the windowsill, with a bunch of other things like Christmas stuffed animals. I'm in the house alone basically, just me, my dad who is in bed, the cat and the dog. All of a sudden from my room I hear one of these wind-up snow globe things start playing Christmas music. I rush over and it's stopped by now. Only played for about 5 seconds or so. Those were the only ones we had. The cat never goes up there, and even if it did I have no clue how he could have triggered the wind-up song effect to play for 5 seconds when the thing you have to wind is at the very bottom of the snow globe. The only logical explanation I can give is maybe a spring or something contracted/expanded in the shifting winter temperature, but I don't see how they could make it play for 5 whole seconds. I once had to live in Airbnbs for like 6 weeks because I was moving to a new city for a job, but my lease was up before everything became official. At the time I was a 23-year-old girl, probably 115 pounds. I was staying exclusively at places with female hosts, but I showed up to this one, and it was a guy. He says his sister is the host but she's out of town for the night. I was rattled, but it was 7 p.m, my town didn't have many Airbnbs and I couldn't afford to eat the cost of a hotel room. It was an old Victorian home and everything was creaky and creepy. In the middle of the night, like 2 a.m, there was this terrible noise of cats screaming right outside my bedroom door. I heard someone walk up, a light came on, and they shooed the cats away. Then the light turned off, and no receding steps. I sat waiting to hear them walk away and then the doorknob jiggled. I did my best to stay awake all night, clutching a lamp as a weapon. I never heard them walk away. At 4:30 in the morning I literally sprinted out of the house and never looked back. To this day I'll never stay in an Airbnb or use an Uber by myself. A bit of a long story, I lived with my boyfriend in a very nice apartment, albeit a bit small for our needs, in the downtown art district of our city. We always felt really safe, and I would walk our dogs by myself around the block at night without a second thought. Once our lease was up, we moved less than a mile away into a new complex that allowed us the space we needed. We rented the unit before the building was completed, so we weren't aware that our first floor unit wouldn't be behind the gated section of the complex and that the busy sidewalk would be diverted to pass directly by our door. We always heard people outside of our unit and constantly felt less than secure there. For reference, we opted for a live/work unit that was 2 stories. The bottom story had floor-to-ceiling glass windows and a glass door, and the bottom floor could function as a storefront if we had wanted it to. However, we installed blackout curtains to completely block the view from outside, and used the bottom floor as our office, craft space and TV room. The upper floor had our house aka kitchen, living room, 1 bed and 1 bath. This was connected by a set of stairs that led from the kitchen downstairs to the storefront area and had a door halfway down the staircase that locked from the inside of the home space to separate it from the workspace. As I mentioned, the workspace had a glass door that could be opened from the sidewalk had anyone wanted to come inside should we have opted to have an actual storefront. We religiously kept that door locked, and even installed a home security system once we realized just /how/accessible the storefront area was from the street. This particular weekend was both the city's Comic-Con, as well as my boyfriend's birthday. We had been at the convention all weekend and had celebrated at the bars downtown for my boyfriend's birthday. My best friend had left his car parked in the visitor parking around the side of the complex, and on Saturday night, after being out, we called a friend to drive us home. We pulled into the visitor parking to witness someone rapidly bike away from the side of his parked car, and realized we had arrived just as someone broke into his car and stole his spoils from the convention that weekend. Disappointing and stressful as that was, we had a nice breakfast the next morning and headed back to the convention for the last day. We ended the evening by all ordering food and sitting around watching TV for a bit before our friends all went home for the night. I flipped the TV back on after seeing everyone off, and my boyfriend worked on his computer for a few hours. Late in the night, we hear a voice outside the glass door, and it begins to shake. We turn the TV volume down and listen, thinking someone might drunkenly be trying to enter the incorrect unit. Someone is on their phone, talking about breaking into a house. The sound of metal against the concrete outside sets us on high alert, and my boyfriend instructs me calmly to go upstairs, lock our dogs up, and get his gun. I run and grab the gun, shove the dogs into the bathroom, load the magazine into the chamber and hand it to him. By this time, the door has stopped shaking and now the lock is jiggling. The person outside is trying to pick the lock. I'm instructed to hide behind the couch and call the police. Intermittently between trying to pick the lock, the person outside is now also hitting the glass door with a metal pipe. Thankfully, the glass is very thick. I'm on the phone with police dispatch, watching the person I love hold a loaded gun towards a door that's 15 feet from him, bracing for someone with very bad intentions to bust through the door, and expecting all hell to break loose. Finally, we hear the sirens wailing and the sounds from the door cease instantly. Come to find out, whoever was trying to break in had 2 metal pipes and a length of rope outside the door with them, and had attempted to blow our power by grounding the electrical socket outside the storefront doors. We ended up barricading the door with reinforced metal bars and switched units shortly after. The deafening silence inside our house as time seemed to stand still while someone worked to pick the lock from the outside still makes the hairs on my neck stand on end when I think about it. Added bonus, the power in the complex went out 2 days later at 4 a.m., knocking out our home security system. I was sure it was the same person, back to murder us. A few months back, when I was 5 months pregnant with my daughter, my 8-year-old stepdaughter, let's call her Emily, and I were home alone. We were watching a movie, when I got a call from my neighbor saying her child had got hurt and she needed to go to the hospital and she needed someone to care for her other child, a 6-year-old girl, let's call her Umbridge. BC, this child is the devil herself. I'm a mother, and I would want someone to do the same for me if I was in that situation. I agreed. BC, I'm lazy and pregnant. I offered for Umbridge to come over. I didn't really know the neighbors that well, the parents keep themselves to themselves, but I know their kids go to Emily's school, and because of I only see Emily each weekend, I don't really keep up with the gossip. However, when I broke the news to Emily about the new addition, Emily started complaining, and broke the news that Umbridge was the meanest girl who liked knives and punching people. Great. I set up a spare bed in the office cause at that point, even though I'm not sure how reliable an 8-year-old is, if what Em said was half true, no way is that child sharing a room with my baby, and within about 10 minutes Umbridge rocks up. One thing worth noting is this child is tiny. She's about the size of a 4-year-old and looks like one of those possessed dolls in horror movies. Pale, big eyes, creepy smile. The works. When she saw I was pregnant, she said, "I want a baby, they're so little and vulnerable." And then laughed. I was creeped out, and Emily sprung to the defense of me and her half-sister and took Umbridge into the sitting room, and turned on a movie. They were watching Inside Out, and I was watching Umbridge like a hawk. BC, I did not trust that child. Spoiler alert, Bing Bong dies in Inside Out. Very sad scene, even made my 30-year-old bouncer husband, DH, cry. Did I mention my husband is a bouncer, a teddy bear, but you do not want to mess with him or his girls? Umbridge laughed. I never knew a child could laugh so evilly, and then murmured, I like it when innocent ones suffer. I was 100% creeped out, especially as how did this kid get such a vocabulary? When Emily was 6, she could only master talking about animals and toys. I was half tempted on calling DH back from work, or yeeting this spawn back to her house. Time for bed came, and I put both to bed and got ready myself. I checked on them, and not too creepy, she can't help it, Umbridge sleeps with her eyes open. Was completely knocked out, but had eyes wide open, with that grin. The grin that could kill. My room is a story above Emily's room in the office, and I went back to my room. Emily came up to my room sobbing and begging to sleep in bed with me. She said Umbridge was asleep still, but she didn't feel safe. I, of course, agreed, and we fell into a deep, but uneasy slumber. I woke up in a cold sweat a bit later as I felt ill. Gut feeling ill. I turned around, and DH had returned, and Emily was still there. I tried to drift off again, when I heard whispering. It is key to note, I was sleeping on my back, with a night mask on. It didn't sound like or DH, and the second I heard the voice say, "Little one," I ripped off that eye mask and yeeted on my lamp, and came face to face with Umbridge, who was holding a mother-fricking knife to my pregnant stomach. I screamed, but my husband had already woken up when I turned on the lamp and took Umbridge off the bed. Emily saw and wrestled the knife of her, while screaming in that terrified kid wail. This alerted my other neighbors. It was about half midnight, so some people were still up. One of them is a cop, and used the spare keys we had given them to come in and check on us, badge and all. He walked in on me clutching my pregnant stomach, screaming in a way that suggests someone has attempted murder on your child. My husband, 6 feet 4 inches man, holding a Satan spawn at arm's length, who is giggling gleefully, and my 8-yo, who is clutching a knife and sobbing. After getting a reply from each of us of what was going on, he called Umbridge's mother and asked if she was home, and if he could return her and ask her some questions. She agreed. We dropped Emily off at nice neighbor's house, as she had had enough emotion for one day, where she was looked after by the cop's wife. Apparently, the reason Umbridge's 2-yo brother was hurt, was that she had pushed him down the stairs and he got concussion. Stuff like this happens all the time, she said. I think she loves control. Not only that, Umbridge's mother took Umbridge's 9-yo sister to the hospital with her, because I wanted a break from that lil BTCH. Furthermore, she was about to press charges for child endangerment when she found out my husband scratched her a tiny bit when he lifted her off the bed. My most traumatizing moment, which will burn my memory for life, could have been prevented if someone looked after her own kids. Earlier this summer, I was staying by myself at my grandmother's lake house in CT, which was surrounded on all sides by houses and then the water out front. Pets would wander back and forth across lawns all the time, which pissed my uncle off to no end, as the dogs all liked to crap on our lawn, and it wasn't unusual to hear a dog bark or howl in the night. However, at about 9:30 p.m. this night, I all of a sudden heard a cat scream repeatedly and then start howling in pain. You know, kind of like in cartoons when they're crying or whining, except it was bone-chillingly haunting and primal. It sounded real close by, and there was a good chance it was the neighbor's cat that had gotten into some kind of animal, or run over by a car. The poor thing was wailing and wailing for what seemed like ages, so I finally decided I'd get up and see where it was and maybe call the neighbor if it was serious. I walked out the front door with a flashlight and my pocket knife and followed the sounds of the poor bugger. I could tell I was getting close, when all of a sudden, the cat gets cut off mid-wail, and there's just silence in the air. It was almost deafening. Whatever the hell it got into had finished it off. I decided to cut losses and go to bed and pick up on the gossip the next day. Next morning arrives and I ask our uphill neighbor if he'd seen or heard anything about a cat the night before. Apparently, the cat's owner found it out behind his garage, completely fucking disemboweled. We're not talking about a cat killed by a protective mother raccoon or anything now. Whatever the fuck got it was either hunting it and feasting royally, or performed an excruciatingly thorough revenge killing of some sort. It was probably a bobcat doing the former, but we never found out for sure. I'll never forget how short and suddenly that cat was silenced the night before. I can only hope it didn't suffer for too long, and wasn't being dissected while still alive. My house is creepy at times, and weird things have happened to me and my family. To me more than anyone. It was somewhere around 2013, I was playing random chords on my guitar, and recording what I played. I make a slight pause and then continued. I decided to play it back, and in the pause I hear the voice of a woman saying "Mas," Spanish for more. I showed it to a few friends in school, as well as family members. Sadly, I don't have it anymore. Chances are that it went away along with the phone that was stolen from me. I have looked through various places I might have it saved on, and old hard drives, but I have never found it. Anyway, I mention this because I believe that it is the voice of the person or entity from my next encounters. My mom had an artificial tree in the living room next to the entrance of the hallway. From the kitchen you have a complete view of the hallway. It was around 3 a.m., and I was about to go to bed. I wasn't tired since I normally slept around 5 a.m. at the time. The only lights on at the time were the ones in the kitchen, so the hallway would go from a bit dark to really dark as you reach the end. I was pouring myself a glass of water and I decide to glance up to the hallway for some reason. Next to the tree, I see a very tall woman dressed in black, with a big hat and a veil covering her face. I look down at the glass of water I'm pouring and ask, "What's up, Mom?" It took me a little bit to realize it wasn't her because she was way taller than my mom, nor does she go to sleep with a hat and a veil. She looked to be about 6 feet tall more or less. I also knew it wasn't my mom because the door to my parents' room always makes a noise when it opens and closes, and I did not hear it. I quickly looked back up and it was gone. I got a bit of a bad vibe, but I was able to shake it off and go to my room, which you have to cross the hallway to get to. That's not the end of it though. A few weeks after that encounter, I was asked to go get a pizza. On my way back home, I look at my rear view mirror and I see the same woman from the hallway. This time I saw her without her veil. She had a skull for a face and very dark and empty eye sockets. I slowed down and looked at the seat behind me, empty. This didn't feel scared though, I honestly felt safe. Like being protected. I was just surprised to see her. That day I decided to tell my parents about these two encounters I had, but they didn't think much of it. If anything, they probably thought I was crazy or something. Things went kind of quiet for a while, but my mom out of nowhere started to get really weird vibes from my room and still does to this day at times. She says she feels uneasy for some reason. A few years later, my littlest niece, who was a few months from turning 4, decided to go to the laundry room. I was sleeping that morning, but I was woken up by her loudly crying. I get up and ask my mom what had happened. She tells me that my little niece went into the laundry room and that she said she was scared by the lady with the black hat. I immediately told her, "You see, you didn't believe me." It felt like a victory knowing I'm not the only one who has seen her. I just know she saw the same lady I saw. In addition to that, there is no possible way she would have known of my encounter because I only told my parents when we were alone, nor did she ever hear it from them either. Like I said, they just dismissed me and forgot about it after I told them. After that, something else happened to me. It was cold one night, and the heater came on as usual. Since my room is small, it heats up pretty quick. I pulled down my cover a bit, down to about my elbows, and turn to face the wall next to my bed. I then feel my cover get pulled close to my shoulder. I didn't freak out or anything, but what the fuck did cross my mind? I said thanks, and just went to sleep. Several nights after that I felt someone or something sit on my bed. I am a very light sleeper, so I am easily woken up by movements or noises. It didn't happen often, but I would feel it when it did. The last time I saw this entity, maybe, was about 2 years ago. I was on my way to my university, and that night I couldn't sleep at all. I got an hour of sleep that night at most. The plus 2 more previous nights of not sleeping well either had me barely alive. I was tired. Anyway, I was driving down an empty road at 8 a.m., and I felt my eyes very, very heavy. It felt like I was going to fall asleep on the wheel at any moment. When I started to doze off, I saw something head straight at me. It looked like an empty black trash bag or a black old rag that looked super heavy. Like it could just break through my windshield. It scared the crap out of me, and just like that, my sleepiness went away, and got safely to my destination. I haven't seen this lady again, but I do feel someone watching me at times in my house at night, and hear the floor creak once in a while sometimes. If all of this is somehow the same entity that is still around me, then I suppose it is my fault for it not leaving. I tend to greet the feeling of being watched on with a hello friend. I don't feel any evil, to be honest, but it is kind of creepy sometimes. Either way, I kind of feel safe. If it really wanted to hurt me, it would have done so. I always try to find explanations to what I see or hear, like the creaking floor being triggered by a temperature change. The black rag, just being part of my imagination or something. However, there are a few things like this that I can't explain. Like that feeling of being watched, and the strange vibes emitted from my room, all this being caused by the same entity, if any, and specifically, the lady which my little niece and I have seen. Not my own experience, but my dad. Backstory: we lived in a privileged area in the countryside. A few years before, the whole community had been in a scandal about keeping exotic pets such as tigers, lions, pumas and all other big cats. But because of the danger and cruelty, the law forces made them give them up. But a lot of them simply set them free into the wild instead of giving their pets to the authorities. A few years after their release, I was born, and we moved to the area. Our house faced a thick forest, which was full of all kinds of animals. Our family cat Spoot, I chose the name because it was the only thing that sounded like a word I could say. The cat was outside late at night, and my dad was getting annoyed because he wanted to lock the cat flap. So he went outside rustling a pack of treats, and heard hissing. In the area there were a billion cats, so fights were very often. My dad just tsk-tissed at the darkness. Spoot sprinted past his legs into our garden, his tail between his legs. My dad looked around to find the cause of Spoot's displeasure, and saw 2 massive yellow eyes 3 feet away from him. Obviously, if you see eyes bigger than a cat's head, they don't belong to a normal cat. At that moment the automatic light turned on, and my dad could see what it was. A puma was crouching and getting ready to pounce, and my dad ran as fast as he could. The puma demolished our fence, then ran off into the forest. My dad was so terrified he said he almost SHT himself. The next month authorities found the puma along with a bunch of other big cats that the rich idiots had released into the wild. And charges were pressed against those they knew had released the poor animals. The thing I find most terrifying is that they could survive and adapt that quickly to the terrain they're not used to. Also, that fence was absolutely killed, like it came clean off the hinges. Years ago as a kid I was having a shower at night as I usually do. To keep myself entertained, I think I was licking the glass wall of the shower to drink the water and pressing myself against it. Stupid kid stuff. Being female, I'm fair developed at a young age. I can assume I was pressing my breasts against the glass while licking the water off. My father happened to need something from outside and went into the backyard where the window to the bathroom was facing. It wasn't a very big window and it was up high. My father startled a peeping Tom who legged it when my father went into the backyard. I was slightly horrified when he told me what happened, but didn't think much of it before. It was so random and an unheard of thing to do. Sometimes later, maybe a week or 2. Honestly can't remember the timeline too well. We all went to bed like normal. I never usually wake up, but something woke me up in the middle of the night. While I was adjusting to waking up, I heard heavy breathing coming from my doorway. I was frozen and didn't want to move. I didn't hear footsteps, so no one was going past my room to the toilet. After what seemed like eternity, the heavy breathing stopped and I went back to sleep. The next morning I asked who was standing at my doorway last night, and neither my brother or my parents knew what I was talking about. When I was around 15 or 16 years old, my grandmother, whom I lived with, went on a business trip to Oklahoma, which is 4 to 5 states away, and left me with my 18 to 19-year-old sister to watch me for a few days. It was around 8 p.m. that night and she left with her friends to go grab something from their house around the corner. I was alone, sitting in the kitchen at this little breakfast bar that my family built into the wall that looks out into the living room. All of the lights were on, the house phone is next to me, and there is music playing on the radio in my room down the hall, just loud enough to hear from where I am in the kitchen. I've just watched her pull out of the driveway from my vantage point in her friend's green pickup truck when I hear my sister's voice very loudly and clearly coming from my room down the hall. My name, come back here. I love you, I want to show you something. I immediately called my sister from down the street on the house phone, she had my cell phone, and told her what happened. I then called my friend just down the street and told him what was going on. Every hair on my body was standing up, my heart was pounding, I couldn't move from the stool I sat on. And this wasn't the first time we heard her voice from another room when she wasn't even home. We've heard my dad's voice once, my stepmom's once, and my sister's multiple times. Always the same. Always to come back to a room. In different houses, my grandma's, and my dad's house before and after he moved. We've had a few other physical encounters with whatever it is too. I don't think I have mentioned this to anyone and it has been years. It freaks me out to think about it. My dad always warned me not to mess with Ouija boards or anything of the like. It is some serious stuff. So I always had a bad feeling about this sort of thing. When I was in 5th grade, me and some friends were running around the neighborhood just being kids. We lived in a subdivision but a lot of the surrounding areas had yet to be developed. That meant lots of unsupervised fun, running around in the woods and splashing through creeks. One day we decided to do a seance. I mean, not really, we just kind of sat in a circle. We were just kids, we didn't know what we were doing. There were 3 or 4 of us. We were out in a field on a pretty sunny day. We had a candle and started talking about it. I immediately got a horrible feeling in my gut. After sitting there for about 5 minutes I got up and looked at the sky. It was a sunny day except for the sky suddenly seemed to have a darkish tint to it. A circular cloud had formed directly over the place we were sitting. It freaked me out like nothing has before. The atmosphere was suddenly dark and heavy. I played it cool around my friends and diverted them to another activity. That was one of the scariest things I can remember. I don't know if it was my adolescent mind playing tricks on me or not. Either way, I still have a very vivid memory of that afternoon.